There are many words that we could use to describe Donald Trump's administration. Chaotic comes to mind, so does corrupt, but criminal stands out amongst them all. He is running a criminal operation, constantly breaking the law, like he did when he was a private citizen, constantly undermining, if not attacking, our Constitution, the rule of law. And nowhere is that clearer than in Donald Trump's detainment and disappearing of lawful permanent residents, with no due process, and now, as we are learning, no just cause, even from the highest-ranking administration officials, which we just saw in a leaked report that shows Donald Trump broke the law in one of the biggest scandals we have seen in his presidency. We're going to get into it all, but before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. Now, before we can hear about this leaked report from inside the State Department that shows Donald Trump is running a criminal administration, a criminal organization at this point, I want to hear from Senator Chris Murphy, who gave some important context on this story and so many like it.
A young man by the name of Memo, an immigrant and a legal permanent resident of the United States, is being held right now in prison, even though no criminal charges have been filed against him. Now, I want to tell you why that should matter to every single American. Khalil is a recent graduate of Columbia University. He opposed Israel's military operation in Gaza. He has deep animus toward Israel's policies and the U.S. support for those policies. He helped organize the protests over Gaza at his university last year. You can disagree with his views or his politics, but there is no evidence he has broken any law. But last weekend, Trump officials entered his apartment and took him into custody. They brought him to a detention facility in New Jersey at first, but when his family went to visit him, he wasn't there. For a while, his family and his lawyer had no idea where he was. They eventually found out that he was being held in a detention facility in Louisiana, and that's where he still is today. In dictatorships, they call this practice being disappeared. No charges, no claims of criminal behavior. The White House doesn't claim he did anything criminal. He's in jail because of his political speech. And here's why everybody should care. In America, your political speech is protected, whether or not the president likes what you say. But today, if you're loyal to Donald Trump, your speech is going to be protected, even if it's hate speech. You can be Marco Ellis, an employee of Doge, who said he, quote, was racist before it was cool, and, quote, normalize Indian hate. And the vice president of the United States will tweet in your defense. But if you are disloyal to Trump, or you're organizing against Trump's political agenda, your speech could be criminalized. You could find yourself in jail. Now, Trump chose to begin by disappearing a Palestinian immigrant, hoping that his place of birth and his immigrant status would just cause people to look the other way. But we cannot, because once it becomes normal for the regime to disappear people simply for protest against the regime's policies, once a citizen or a resident of America can be locked away with no charges against them simply because they protested, there is no going back for America. Even if you're a hardened Trump supporter, this practice should cross the line for you. Even if you disagree with Khalil's views, this practice should cross the line for you. This has nothing to do with supporting Trump. This is about supporting an American value, maybe the most important American value, protecting free speech, even if it's speech you disagree with. If our new reality is that a president can disappear an opposition protester with no charges filed against them, we are not America any longer. Today it's Mahmoud Khalil. Tomorrow it's me or you.
Now, you can disagree with peaceful protests across the country. You can disagree with their message. You can disagree with how they deliver it. You can disagree with protests on college campuses. You can disagree with protests as written in op-eds. But freedom of speech is something that we, on the liberal side of things, actually care to defend. Elon Musk calls himself a free speech absolutist, but is constantly kicking people who disagree with him off his platform. Donald Trump wants to silence and suppress the free press because he does not like criticism, but we on the left actually must defend free speech, and especially the speech we disagree with, because that's the speech that actually needs defense. Donald Trump does not agree. He thinks he can police thought. He thinks he can police protest. He thinks he can police speech. And he doesn't think that he needs a just cause for it. He does not think that he needs to follow the law, and that is exactly what just came out of his own State Department in a leaked report that we can see right here. Days before masked immigration and customs enforcement agents detained a Tufts University student, the State Department determined that the Trump administration had not produced any evidence showing that she engaged in anti-Semitic activities or made public statements supporting a terrorist organization, as the government has alleged. The finding, contained in a March memo that was described to the Washington Post, said Secretary of State Marco Rubio did not have sufficient grounds for revoking this student's visa under an authority empowering the top U.S. diplomat to safeguard the foreign policy interest of the United States. The memo was written by an office within the State Department, raising doubts about the public accusations made by the Trump administration as it sought to justify the student's deportation. The Department of Homeland Security said the student engaged in activities in support of Hamas, a U.S.-designated terrorist organization, but neither that agency nor U.S. prosecutors have provided evidence for that claim. They do not have the evidence to support their claim. They don't. They know they don't, and they don't care. They see this as a wedge issue that Democrats and members of the media, the mainstream press, are going to be too afraid to speak out against, because it is a topic in which so many, as I've said before, feel a little queasy, feel a little uncomfortable speaking on. But again, those are the instances in which we need to be the most staunch defenders of free speech when we disagree with what is being said. Donald Trump wants to find a wedge in all of these issues, so Democrats are afraid to speak out. Folks should be able to speak out, say how they feel, stand up for human rights, stand up for the rights of people who are being oppressed, stand up for people who are being oppressed in our own country, which is what we see Donald Trump's campaign against lawful permanent residents who he wants to claim to be in state are what? Criminals? In the case of Abrego Garcia, shipping them off to concentration camps in El Salvador? Again, without due process or cause? And the defense is absolutely absurd, as we see from Stephen Miller right here.
Your argument is that you don't have to bring him back home, but will you?
So I want to correct, I hate to do it, Bill, but I got to correct you on every single thing that you said, because it was all wrong. First, we won the Supreme Court case, clearly, 9-0. A district court judge said unconscionably that the president and his administration have to go into El Salvador and extradite one of their citizens, an El Salvadorian citizen, so that would be kidnapping, that we have to kidnap an El Salvadorian citizen against the will of his government and fly him back to America, which would be an unimaginable act and an invasion of El Salvador's sovereignty. So we appealed to the Supreme Court, and it said clearly, no district court can compel the president to exercise his Article II foreign powers in any way whatsoever. DOJ called me after that Supreme Court ruling, and they said, this is amazing. We won this case 9-0. We are in excellent standing here. So this has been portrayed wrong for 72 hours in the media. They said the most a court could ever compel you to do would be to facilitate return, which would basically mean if El Salvador voluntarily sends him back, we wouldn't block him at the airport. We would put him back into ICE detention, and then he would be deported either back to El Salvador or somewhere else. The Supreme Court said that is the most the government can be expected to do. So we won the case handily. The misreporting on this has been atrocious.
Okay,
Secondly,
I appreciate
he was
the
not, no, Bill, it's important. He was not mistakenly sent to El Salvador.
Okay, so do you still
He's
believe
an illegal
he is a
alien
member of
from
MS?
El Salvador. Hold on, this is important. In 2019, he was ordered deported. He has a final removal order from the United States. These are things that no one disputes. Where is he from? El Salvador. Where is he a resident and citizen of? El Salvador. Is he here illegally? Yes. Does he have a deportation order? Yes. A DOJ lawyer who has since been relieved of duty, a saboteur, a Democrat, put into a filing incorrectly that this was a mistaken removal. It was not. This was the right person sent to the right place. Now, some have said, well, but he had a thing called a withholding order. So a withholding order means you've been ordered deported, but an immigration judge is saying you cannot go back to a particular country. Here's the thing. If you are a member of a foreign terrorist organization, you cannot have a withholding order. Since he's in MS-13, there is no withholding order. Furthermore,
answered my question.
the gang that he is accused of being persecuted by doesn't exist anymore in El Salvador. The 18th Street gang is gone. So you have an illegal alien from El Salvador. Bill, where are we supposed to send the illegal alien from El Salvador?
You haven't even
to what
allowed me
country?
to ask you a question. Are you convinced he is still a member of MS-13? That was your original charge.
Yes. But here's the thing, Bill. Yes, but here, not only am I convinced of it, not only is El Salvador convinced of it, Bill, he's an illegal alien from El Salvador with the...
They really just don't have a case. They don't have evidence. They didn't give this man due process. The Supreme Court has disagreed with him in a 9-0 decision. I don't know why Stephen Miller said they agreed with him. That is not the case. They are shipping people out of this country without cause and without care, and are saying that they're not responsible for getting them back. It is disgusting. It is fascism. That is what this regime is. And Adam Schiff did a great job calling that out right here.
They plucked this man off the street. They deported him in violation of a court's order. They acknowledged they did it in error. They refused to lift a finger to bring him back. They taunted the judge, essentially, saying, it's your court order, let's see you enforce it. It was a mocking tone by the administration. They never offered to try to remedy their mistake. Now they're being told by the Supreme Court that they're going to have to remedy this. Will they pick up the phone, as we know the president could do, and call the president of El Salvador, with whom he is very close, and say, hey, we made a mistake, send this guy back? They're going to obviously be most concerned with what they're always concerned with, which is saving face. So that doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence, but if they ignore this instruction by the Supreme Court and the fault by the district court, then we are really in that uncharted territory we feared, where they're simply flouting even a court order.
Donald Trump has specifically picked this issue because he knows Democrats will be afraid to impose what is publicly being projected out as a tough-on immigration plan. But that's not what this is. Democrats do not want people who are breaking the law and are in the country illegally to continue to break the law and be in the country illegally. What we do want is due process for those people, something that is afforded to them in our Constitution, something we still believe in. And so we shouldn't be afraid to take on this fight, a fight over human rights because of message testing. No, we have to say what is actually the truth, that Donald Trump is shipping people to foreign prisons without cause, without due process, and in a violation of their human rights. That is more important than any message testing could be. So let's call it out. It's what we're doing on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.